As you guys can hear, my voice is in rough shape. It's been a pretty terrible week. Sorry, my voice is shot. Long before the Bring It On franchise, there were tons of movies about cheerleaders. Why? Pretty simple, really. Because there's a large portion of the male population that wants to bone cheerleaders. So we got a wide variety of cheeky sex comedies with cheerleaders in various stages of undress. These movies were cheap to make and often made back more than triple their budget, which kickstarted the Cheersploitation subgenre. If you like movies that are 10% plot and 90% nudity, you've come to the right place. Here's 5 Cheersploitation movies you may have overlooked. Oh, and so I don't have to say this every time, due to the content within these films, none of them are on YouTube. The Cheerleaders. The Cheerleaders is a 1973 sex comedy from director Paul Glicker. It's about the cheerleaders at Amorosa High School. The movie also goes by the title Return to Montclair High, which doesn't make sense because the school is Amorosa High. This cover is super misleading. Makes me wonder if they re-edited the film because none of these people are in the movie. Don't confuse this with Hot Times at Montclair High. That's a completely different picture. I'm gonna have to track down a copy and see if I can make sense of this. Anyway, the cheerleaders work in tandem with their school's football team to help them remain undefeated. What do? The night before the big game, the cheerleaders target the opposing team's star players and proceed to spend the night helping them to plant their zucchini. So the next day, when it's time to play football, they are exhausted, which causes them to lose. It's kind of a brilliant strategy, really. Although you would think that the word would get out that this was going on, but I can't imagine many high school football players deciding that the big game was more important than having all-night cheerleader sex. The movie was shot during the summer of 1972 at the Monte Vista High School. When the producers pitched the movie to the school, they just said it was a comedy and didn't mention all the sex and other saucy elements that would be filmed at the school. So the school was a little embarrassed when they saw the finished picture. A large portion of the extras were some recent graduates from a few local high schools. The Cheerleaders hit theaters on March of 1973. The movie was shot for about $153,000 and went on to make over $2.5 million. This was one of the early Cheersploitation films that saw there was an audience for this sort of debauchery. Some serious tongue-in-cheek humor, mixed with pretty girls getting naked. The movie was such a hit they greenlit the sequel, The Swinging Cheerleaders, which I'll talk about shortly. The Cheerleaders did get a Blu-ray release from Code Red, but it's now out of print and very expensive. However, it's currently streaming on Fossum if you want to check it out. The Swinging Cheerleaders. The Swinging Cheerleaders is a 1974 sex comedy directed by Jack Hill, who would later direct Sorceress. It's a sequel to The Cheerleaders, but not really. The only thing they have in common is cheerleaders. It's about Kate, a reporter for a college newspaper. She goes undercover as a cheerleader to write an article about how it's degrading to women. The movie then goes into the various lives of the cheerleaders, and Kate learns some lessons or something and decides that cheerleading isn't as demeaning as she initially thought. The movie was shot over the course of 12 days in Pacific Palisades, California. It was released in May of 1974, and on a budget of around $165,000, it did very well, making back almost its entire budget the first week. The Swingin' Cheerleaders was later re-released as The Locker Room Girls. With the high returns on this, it showed there was definitely an interest in more cheerleading films, which led to Revenge of the Cheerleaders. The Swingin' Cheerleaders did get a Blu-ray release from Arrow, but it's out of print. It's currently streaming on Plex and Fossum. Revenge of the Cheerleaders. Revenge of the Cheerleaders is a 1976 sex comedy from director Richard Lerner. Lerner was a producer on the first Cheerleaders film and came back to direct what is essentially part 3. Although this one has 2 connections to the previous film, cheerleading, and sexploitation actress Cheryl Rainbow Smith. She was in the Swingin' Cheerleaders as Andrea, and even though this is a sequel, she's playing Heather, a completely new character. Smith was dating the composer for the film, John Sterling, and was pregnant while they were filming, which they had to work into the script. This time, the movie's about the cheerleaders at Aloha High. The cheerleaders essentially rule the school and even some of the local town. Some evil real estate developers want to tear down their school and turn it into a shopping mall. So the cheerleaders go to war in the sexiest possible way to stop the developers. One of the big draws for this was it has a young David Hasselhoff playing the small role of Boner. This was his feature film debut. He was starring in the soap opera The Young and the Restless at the time, and took this job as a way to get into the Screen Actors Guild. He didn't expect the film to ever get released. The movie was shot in 5 different schools across LA, with one of them in the process of being demolished, which helped to fit right in with the plot. The movie was shot in 8 days. It was finished in 1974, but it sat on the shelf for 2 years until being released in 1976. It sometimes goes by the alternate title, Caught with Their Pants Down. Shortly after filming ended, Smith gave birth to her son, Justin. While the editors were working on the production, they shot an additional scene of her holding the baby, which they worked into the film. Quentin Tarantino is a big fan of the movie, and it was shown at the very first Quentin Tarantino Film Festival in Austin, Texas in 1996. The movie did get 2 Blu-ray releases over the years, but they're both limited runs, so they're out of print. The movie is available to stream on Plex and Pluto. The Great American Girl Robbery. The Great American Girl Robbery is a 1979 sex comedy from director Jeff Werner. The movie's about a team of cheerleaders that get kidnapped by ex-football players on their way to a state competition. They're held for a $2 million ransom, and while they're waiting for the money, they're forced to put on a topless beauty pageant. The film was very low budget, and many of the scenes were shot without a permit. This one didn't have Rainbow Smith, but instead had Christine DeBelle, who some might recognize as AL from Meatballs. After this, she went on to do a variety of TV shows like Night Court, as well as movies like A Talking Cat? The movie also starred Jason Williams, who was Flesh Gordon in Flesh Gordon. Roger Ebert, not surprisingly, hated the movie and labeled it his Dog of the Week on an episode of Sneak Previews. The movie hit theaters in September of 1979. It was a regular at drive-ins and grindhouse theaters, where it played for quite some time afterwards. It was re-released in 1980 under the alternate title, Cheerleader's Wild Weekend. In some areas, it was released as Bus 17 is Missing. The movie got a Blu-ray release in 2016, but that's out of print. But then it got re-released last year, and guess what? It's still in print, so you can pick it up for a reasonable price. The movie's also available to stream on Plex. Cheerleader's Beach Party. Cheerleader's Beach Party is the first on this list that's not a sequel to The Cheerleaders. Cheerleader's Beach Party is a 1978 sex comedy directed by Alex E. Goitin and written by porn director Chuck Vincent. The year before this, the director did the teen sex comedy Cherry Hill High. He returned for this movie with most of the same cast and crew. Cheerleader's Beach Party is about the cheerleaders of Rambling U. Their team's in a constant battle with State U, and the cheerleaders spend their days trying to stop State U from stealing their star players. How do they do this? By bribing them with drugs and sex. The movie was released in September of 1978. When the movie hit home video, it was renamed California Cheerleaders. The movie has the distinct honor of being the first film shown on the USA Network series USA Up All Night. It was shown as a double feature with the comedy Stuck on You. This was January 7th, 1989, Season 1, Episode 1, with Gilbert Gottfried as the host. The movie's not on Blu-ray, but it is available for streaming on Amazon and Plex. If you'd like to see the bonus 6th entry and would like to be able to vote on future entries, please consider joining my Patreon. One of these films is this week's bonus entry. Well, that's some cheerleader films. I wanted to do ninja cheerleaders and cheerleader ninjas, but I'm going to save those for another time. Thanks for watching, everyone. I'll see you next time.
Hi.
What do you want? You got something in your eye?
Hi.